It's a little off center, so sorry. Didn't translate well when I copied it over to the thumb drive. This side is the New Tree of Life by Wosi. And the other side is the Old Tree of Life by Whitaker. I actually have a pointer. I don't know why I never use it. So let me see if I can take a minute to dig it out and use it. My thumb is like just numb and tingly for like all day. I don't know if it's from my neuropathy or if it's from my gas or what it is, but my thumb is killing me. Thank God we're watching a movie later. The clicking, the mouse clicking, so bummed. All right, let's see. This is working. Yay, that worked. Okay. Wosi Whitaker. I feel like Mr. Wilson. Doesn't he use a pointer a lot? Okay, that line's supposed to go down the middle, and Five Kingdoms is supposed to be shifted over a little bit. Okay. So, in your New Tree of Life, there are 3 great domains. Domain Archaea, which is primitive bacteria. Most of them are self-feeders. Because why would primitive bacteria be other eaters that are eating us? They're not. They're usually self-feeders. And they might even feed off something kind of extreme, like they use methane or nitrates or sulfur or something like that, and they convert it into nutrients. Almost like photosynthetic bacteria convert sunlight into energy. They can convert methane and sulfur and stuff like that into energy. But they're still considered autotrophic. And this is where you're going to see some weird bacteria. They've got some purple ones and black ones and all that. So those we're not going to focus on, but just wanted to know they exist. Then there's domain bacteria. These are the modern bacteria. This can include autotrophic or heterotrophic bacteria. The cyanobacteria are autotrophic by means of photosynthesis. Now actually cyanobacteria is a broad group, and some of them could be in domain Archaea, some of them could be in domain bacteria. Don't worry about it, don't get hung up on that, that won't be a test question. But it's just not a perfect world, and you can't like say this is just this category, you know. Sometimes things get put in the wrong drawer, what can I tell you? All right, and then these are all your bacteria. So between domain bacteria and domain Archaea, they account for all the bacteria in the New Tree of Life. Now, on your first test, you need to know this stuff. So that includes knowing what the cyanobacteria are and how they're different from heterotrophic bacteria, which is what we're going to cover in the second half of the semester. So this stuff's going to be on your second test. But this stuff is all going to be on your first test, including how they fit into the picture with those, how they're different from those. And we're going to work on that in lab next week. And you only have 1 day in lab next week, right? Because you're Monday, Wednesday people, right? You only have 1 day in lab next week. So I will put out for you next week some slides and some stuff about cyanobacteria. You can draw pictures in lab and include them as observations for your big lab write-up 1 through 3. Okay? Okay. And you also have to do a lab assignment. It's the very next one. So you did the lab 6 parasites, lab assignment 6 parasites. Then the very next one says part 1 cyanobacteria. Just do part 1 cyanobacteria. Don't do part 2, it's too hard. Let it go until after the first test. Just do part 1 cyanobacteria before your first test, okay? Anybody confused? You are confused? So let's focus on the first test and forget about the second test for now. So for your first test, you'll do a lab on Wednesday on cyanobacteria. You'll include that in lab write-up 1 through 3, and it'll be on your first test. And when you go home, this weekend or next weekend, look in your lab assignments and do the second lab assignment, part 1 only, about cyanobacteria, okay? There's a few little questions to ask. Essentially getting at, how are cyanobacteria different from these other bacteria? Well, for one thing, the cyanobacteria are going to be green, blue-green. The heterotrophic bacteria are not, because they're not photosynthetic, because they're eating other things. For another thing, when you looked at cyanobacteria on that poster, they had all kinds of weird shapes. Some were long chains, some were round blobby things, and they're all different shapes and stuff. When you look at these bacteria, they're going to be cocci, bacilli, spirals, and vibrios. They occur in certain distinct shapes. Whereas the cyanobacteria, it's pond scum. It's all over the place. It's going to be any shape or form. They're kind of gooey and amorphous and yicky, and whereas these are nice, distinct shapes. And the biggest difference is they are not going to be pathogenic to us because they're self-feeders. These are where the pathogens are going to be. That's the biggest difference. And if you can understand what I just said today, you'll be good for your first test. And then hopefully by Wednesday, remind me if you need help. By Wednesday, you should know some names of cyanobacteria, so that if you see them on your test, you can recognize them. I'll tell you right now. How about that? Let me make them green and blue, so you'll remember they're cyanobacteria. I forgot to mention that the plural for genus is genera. Remember, the plural for phylum is phyla, the plural for genus is genera. So some example genera of cyanobacteria. All right. Number 1, spirulina. How many people already knew that? A couple of you did, because I know you eat spirulina from the health food store. When you go home and you do your assignment, that's an easy one to Google. And when you do your assignment, you don't have to write me a book. Just write a paragraph. What the hell are cyanobacteria? What the hell are spirulina? Where do they come from? What about them? They find them in the health food store, they grow in ponds, whatever. Doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Short little paragraph, I don't really care. Okay? Just want you to get an awareness of cyanobacteria, and then we're going to move on from that. Another genus of cyanobacteria is Oscillatoria, another easy one to Google. Anabina is another one. Nostoc is another one. And I'll put one more, Pleocapsa. Now I think you only have to pick 2 for your assignment, so you can pick any ones you want.
Is that paragraph on me?
Yeah. And give me a picture. I love pictures. Make it fun, because it's short, it's quick, easy. It's just like, what are cyanobacteria? They say that if you go to the supermarket and you're shopping for meat, you know how they have those meat counters and it's got like packages of meat and then it's got the lights shining on it, and sometimes you pick up the meat and you'll see a little slimy something in the corner, maybe greenish slimy or maybe a little greenish slime on the meat when you turn the package, kind of shine. They say that can be cyanobacteria because it grows in there because of the moisture and the lights. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. But it wouldn't hurt you anyway because they're photosynthetic. It might be a little unappetizing, but you're going to cook it. And that's not the worst bacteria on the meat. And all meat is covered with bacteria. Why? Because it came from an animal that was just gutted a few days ago. You know, they ripped his bowels out and got his own poop all over the meat. Meat is covered in bacteria. That's why you have to cook it. I guarantee you, you buy meat at the supermarket. bring it home, open that plastic, stick your swab in there, swab it on your Petri plate. That Petri plate's gonna be covered. There is bacteria on meat all the time. It's unavoidable. There's nothing they can do about it. You have to cook it. My grandma, but probably she got it from her mother. You know, they're Pennsylvania Dutch, and Pennsylvania Dutch have a reputation for being really fanatically clean. So, my grandma would like, you know, the turkey or the chicken, you know, how it has a big cavity in the middle. She would like squirt the dish soap in there and get a big old squirt brush and scrub the living crap out of that cavity until you were sliding off your chair. You'd scrub the inside of that bird with soap. Like, just cook it. All you do. Give it a friggin' animal, for Christ's sake. Actually, it wasn't on My Strange Addiction. It was on some other show. You know how they have these shows about all these wackadoo people?
Yeah. The one eating the Tide.
What'd she do?
You're talking about the one eating the laundry soap?
The one with
Or the one with the-
girl with the tooth,
or how about the
toothbrush?
toilet paper?
That shit.
This girl, and she was married and everything, and she got married, and before she got married, like, her fiance had no idea that she had this problem, and then, now that they're married and he's living with her, she's starting to think, like, something unusual here. The girl would scrub her anus.
Like inside.
Inside, until she bled, actually. She was,
Oh, you think?
every bowel movement would freak her out so much, because then she'd have to like go through this whole spending 3 hours in the shower thing and having toothbrushes in there for that.
You think that was her mother's fault, maybe?
That's going on in here. I wonder if she had, you know, I mean, your vagina, you have sex, I wonder if that bothered her. But I guess it was the whole fecal thing. She just couldn't mentally cope with the.
And she didn't go outside either. She wouldn't like go outside. They finally got her to go
Yeah,
on
they
a
got to go on a
picnic.
picnic, I remember that. And she also had troubles with, like, she kind of didn't want to eat, because if she ate, then she'd have to have a bowel movement, and if she had a bowel movement, then she'd have to scrub the living crap out of her asshole. It was really sad though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was freakish and sad, like.
Did they ever root any of that back to like her childhood or anything like that? Do they ever find like?
They got her hooked up with a cognitive behavioral therapist and they fixed her. Is that what they called it?
They fixed her.
They fixed
Well, that's good.
They, what did they made her eat shit or something?
Yeah, no,
I'll eat her in here.
She wouldn't eat protein because she would eat protein, but she wouldn't eat fiber because she was scared to poop. So they finally got her eating carrots on a picnic outside. That was a great thing.
And the thing is, can you imagine putting yourself on TV?
How was that going to go?
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I don't know how they get these people, there must be a large sum of money involved. Or I guess maybe for the therapy, could we pay for the therapy for them? That would be a good trade-off, because that therapy's gotta be expensive. And most people probably couldn't afford it. All right, here's our nutrient of life. We covered the domain bacteria, the domain archaea, and then here's the domain eukarya. Now I carried it over to the old tree of life. Let's start at the bottom. Domain eukarya in the new tree of life includes all of these old tree of life kingdoms. Kingdom fungi, kingdom protista. I have to scroll down for animalia, but you can see it on your page. Oopsie. Oh dear. It's flicking up. Animalia and, oh, it still is. What the hell? I told you, I can't click worth of shit with this cast on. Oh well, planta and animalia, you can see it on yours, right? And I think you probably already know all about heterotrophic and autotrophic protista, right? You know algae come from 3 different kingdoms, right? Here's kingdom fungi. So I mentioned algae here, but don't forget, some plants are algae, some protista are algae, and some monera are algae. Okay, kingdom fungi, you know, multicellular and unicellular, we talked about that. And kingdom monera. So kingdom monera in the old tree of life is only one kingdom. In in the new tree of life, it's actually 2 great domains with many, 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 many kingdoms. And I put this box up here just to help you remember, because sometimes you're reading your test paper and there's like A, B, C, D choices, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know, Protista, Protozoa, Prokaryote, I don't know. All bacteria are prokaryotes. All prokaryotes are bacteria. In fact, bacteria and prokaryote are the same thing. It's just 2 different words for this. They're synonyms, okay? Everything else is a eukaryote. So if it's not bacteria, it's a eukaryote. If it's bacteria, it's a prokaryote. If it's cyanobacteria, it's bacteria. It's a prokaryote. If it's eubacteria, it's bacteria. It's a prokaryote. If it's eukarya, it's not bacteria. So don't let the EU part confuse you. If it's got bacteria in the word, it's bacteria. Monera is the kingdom for bacteria. So if you see Monera, it's bacteria, it's prokaryote. Okay? Now I'll say something about, it's unicellular protista. Is it a prokaryote or eukaryote? You'll pick prokaryote because of the protista, the prokaryote thing. No, don't do that. Protista are eukaryotes. I know, really? Do we have to be that confusing? I don't know. It's very confusing. I totally get it. Okay, we go till 5:20, right? Okay. Let's see. We can cover that another day. Which would you rather do, just in case we run out of time? Maggot medicine or facts of life in the 1500s?
Facts of life in the 1500s.
It's reading. I'm going to read them. Okay, you asked for it. You got it.
No. I better speak up.
Oh, I'll just leave it for now. I'll leave it for now. Okay. Here you go. Oh, I checked off the wrong thing.
I was hoping for the Wesker's choice.
There's parasite slideshow another day too. Facts of life in the 1500s. You can relax now. Lecture's over. Just fun from here on out. Some of you get to go home after this. Some of you get to watch yet another movie. Okay. But it'll be fun. That's all you have to do is watch movies. Okay, facts of life in the 1500s. The next time you're washing your hands and you complain because the water temperature is too cold, just think about how things used to be in the good old days. Here are some facts of life from the 1500s. Most people got married in June because they took their yearly bath in May and they still smelled pretty good in June. However, they were starting to smell, so brides carried a bouquet of flowers to hide their body odor. Baths consisted of a big tub filled with hot water. The man of the house had the privilege of the nice, clean water. Then all the other sons and men. Then the women, and finally the children got to use the bath water. Last of all, the babies. By then the water was so dirty, you could actually lose someone in it, hence the saying, don't throw out the baby with the bath water.